My aunt said my kids don't count. They heard every word. We were standing in my parents' living room in Columbus, Ohio, the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. The air smelled like cinnamon and something burning. Probably my mother's attempt at cornbread stuffing. Fox News played on mute in the background, flickering blue against the beige walls. My son Carter was 8. My daughter Bree was 6. They were sitting cross-legged on the carpet near the hallway, coloring turkeys they'd made at school, their little hands gripping crayons so tightly their knuckles went white. My Aunt Barbara, Dad's older sister, the woman who wore her church hat like a crown and her opinions like armor, stood near the kitchen island holding a glass of Chardonnay. She was talking to my cousin Michelle, the one whose kids got the good seats at every family dinner. The ones whose photos hung framed on my parents' mantle while mine stayed trapped in a drawer somewhere. Barbara's voice carried. It always did. She wasn't whispering. She wasn't even pretending. If you stand for justice and believe no abuse of power should go unpunished, like this video and tell me in the comments. What's the one thing they deserved most? I read every single reply. And for more stories where the powerful finally lose, subscribe today. You can't miss our next deep dive into the shocking moment an authority figure's reign of terror ended after they foolishly targeted an unsuspecting victim. I'm just saying, she said, waving her hand dismissively. Thanksgiving is already tight this year. We can't seat everyone. So we prioritize the kids who actually, count. Michelle laughed. Not a polite laugh. A real one. My mother, Ellen, the woman who raised me on phrases like family first and we take care of our own, didn't flinch. She just nodded, rearranging place cards on the counter like she was solving a puzzle. My father, sitting in his recliner with a Bud Light balanced on his knee, grunted in agreement without looking up. I stood frozen near the couch. My hands were cold. My chest was tight. But it wasn't the words that gutted me. It was the sound that followed. A crayon snapping in half. I turned. Carter had stopped coloring. His face was pale, his jaw clenched in that way kids do when they're trying not to cry in front of adults. Bree looked up at him, confused, her blonde ponytail tilted sideways like a question mark. Carter, she whispered. What does she mean we don't count? He didn't answer. He just stared at the floor, his small shoulders curling inward like he was trying to disappear. That was the moment. Not when Barbara said it. Not when my mother stayed silent. But when my son, my 8-year-old boy who still believed the world was fair, learned that some people get to decide who matters and who doesn't, and that his own family had decided he didn't, something inside me didn't break. It sharpened. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't demand an apology or beg Barbara to take it back. I simply walked over to my children, kneeled down beside them, and said the only thing that mattered. Get your coats. Carter looked up at me, eyes glassy. Are we leaving? Yes, I said quietly. We're leaving. My mother's head snapped up. Oh, don't be dramatic, Vanessa. She didn't mean it like that. I stood slowly, picking up Bree's backpack from the couch. She meant it exactly like that. Barbara set her wine glass down with a sharp clink. Excuse me. I turned to face her. My voice was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that makes people nervous. You said my kids don't count, I repeated. And no one in this room corrected you. Silence. My father shifted in his recliner. Michelle looked at her phone. My mother opened her mouth, then closed it again. I zipped Bree's coat and took Carter's hand. His palm was sweaty, trembling slightly. As we walked toward the door, I heard Barbara mutter something under her breath. Something about me being too sensitive. Something about always making everything about me. I stopped. My hand rested on the doorknob. I didn't turn around. You're right, Barbara, I said. I do make everything about me. Especially the $127,000 I've spent keeping this family afloat for the past 8 years. The room went so quiet I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. See you at Thanksgiving, I said. With receipts. Then I opened the door and we left. Behind us, the silence exploded into chaos. Voices rising. Questions firing. Barbara's wine glass hitting the counter too hard. But I didn't look back. I just held my children's hands and walked into the cold Ohio night. knowing that by Thursday, everything would change. Because they had no idea what I'd been documenting. And they had no idea who I'd already called. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was angry. Anger burns hot and fast, then fades. What I felt was colder, steadier. It was the kind of clarity that comes when you finally stop pretending something isn't broken. Carter and Bree were asleep by the time we got back to our apartment in Dublin, just north of Columbus. I tucked them in, kissed their foreheads, and stood in their doorway for a long time, watching their chests rise and fall. Carter's turkey drawing was still clutched in his hand, crumpled now. Bree's backpack sat by her bed, her pink lunchbox peeking out. They were good kids. Quiet, polite, the kind who said please and thank you without being reminded. The kind who deserved to walk into a room and know they belong there. But my family had decided they didn't. And I had spent 8 years funding that decision. I walked to the kitchen, made coffee I wouldn't drink, and sat at the table with my laptop. The apartment was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional rumble of a truck passing on Sawmill Road. Outside, the November wind rattled the windows, carrying the smell of dead leaves and coming snow. I opened my banking app first, then my email, then the folder on my desktop labeled Family, Payments. I'd started keeping records 3 years ago, not because I expected to need them, but because something in me, some small, stubborn voice, whispered that I should. Now I understood why. The spreadsheet loaded slowly, row after row of transfers, payments, emergency loans. Mortgage help for my parents when Dad's hours got cut at the plant. Car payments for my cousin Michelle when she totaled her Honda and couldn't get financing. Medical bills for Aunt Barbara's gallbladder surgery. Holiday expenses. Groceries. Utility shut-off notices I paid before they became disconnections. Every single one tagged with a message. Just until we're caught up. Family helps family. We'll pay you back. It's just temporary. Temporary had lasted 8 years. I scrolled to the bottom and stared at the number. $127,483. $127,483. Enough for a down payment on a house. Enough for Carter's and Bree's college funds. Enough for the life I kept delaying, because family comes first. Except family didn't come first. Their family came first. Michelle's kids. Barbara's grandkids. The ones who counted. Mine just funded it. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen until my vision blurred. For years, I told myself this was what love looked like. Quiet, uncomplicated sacrifice. The strong one. The dependable one. The one who never asked for anything because asking made you a burden. But watching Carter's face collapse when he heard those words, the kids who actually count, I finally understood. I wasn't strong. I was just well trained. And I was done being trained. I picked up my phone and opened my contacts. My thumb hovered over a name I hadn't called in months. David Chun Esq. We'd gone to Ohio State together, stayed friendly through the years. He practiced family law now, mostly estate disputes and financial mediation. It was 11:47 p.m., too late to call. But I typed out a text anyway. David, I need advice. Can we meet this week? It's about financial documentation and family boundaries. Urgent. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Then, tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. My office on High Street. Bring everything. I exhaled slowly, the tightness in my chest loosening just slightly. Tomorrow morning. That gave me 12 hours to organize every receipt, every bank statement, every text message where they asked and I said yes. 12 hours to prepare for a conversation I'd avoided my entire adult life. 12 hours before I stopped being the family's safety net and became something they'd never expected. A problem they couldn't ignore. I closed the laptop and looked at the calendar hanging on the fridge. Thanksgiving was 3 days away. My mother had already texted twice, asking what time I'd arrive, reminding me to bring the cranberry sauce nobody else liked, but everyone expected me to make. I didn't reply. Instead, I pulled out a legal pad and wrote a single line at the top. What happens when you stop paying for a family that doesn't pay you back? By Thursday, they were going to find out. If you've ever been the one quietly holding a family together while they pretended not to notice, while they made you feel small for expecting even basic respect, you already know what this moment feels like. It's not dramatic. It's not loud. It's just the second you realize silence isn't strength. It's permission. And I was done giving permission. Thanksgiving was coming. And so was the truth. It didn't start with Thanksgiving. It started years before that, back when I still believed helping meant healing. I was 23 when my father lost his job at the Honda plant in Marysville. The recession hit Ohio like a freight train. Entire shifts laid off, benefits slashed, retirement plans evaporating overnight. I'd just graduated from Ohio State, landed my first real job as a junior accountant at a firm in Worthington, and moved into a cramped studio apartment that smelled like old carpet and someone else's cooking. My parents called on a Tuesday. I remember because I was eating ramen at my desk, staring at spreadsheets I barely understood, when my mother's name lit up my phone. "Sweetheart," she said, voice tight. "We need to talk about the mortgage." That was the first time. $800 to cover the gap until Dad's unemployment kicked in. Just this once, she promised. "We'll pay you back." They never did. But that was okay. I told myself. That's what family does. You help when people are drowning, even if it means you tread water a little longer yourself. The second time came 6 months later. Then a third. Then it wasn't requests anymore. It was expectations. The car payment. The furnace repair. The medical bills that kept stacking up like overdue library books. By the time I was 25, I had a system. Every paycheck, I'd transfer a set amount to my parents' account before I paid my own rent. I'd skip dinners out, buy generic everything, wear the same 3 work outfits on rotation. My coworkers thought I was just frugal. The truth was simpler. I was funding 2 households, and only one of them knew it. Then my cousin Michelle got married. Michelle was my age, bubbly, the kind of woman who posted inspirational quotes on Facebook and sold essential oils at family gatherings. When she announced her engagement at Easter dinner, Aunt Barbara cried actual tears of joy. My mother immediately started planning the bridal shower. My father offered to help with the catering. When Michelle's credit got denied for a car loan 3 months before the wedding, guess who got the call? "Vanessa, honey," she said, her voice syrupy sweet. "I'm in a bind. The dealership says I need a co-signer, just for like a year until my score recovers. You've always been so good with money. Would you mind?" I should have said no. I should have asked why her fiancé couldn't co-sign, why Aunt Barbara couldn't help, why this was somehow my responsibility. Instead I said, "What kind of car?" She drove off the lot in a silver Nissan Rogue 2 weeks later. I got the payment notifications every month for the next 4 years. The pattern was set. I became the family's emergency contact, the fallback plan, the one they called when no one else would answer. And every time I helped, I told myself the same story. This is temporary. This is what family does. They'd do the same for me. Except they wouldn't. When I got engaged to Marcus, quiet, kind Marcus who worked IT at Nationwide, and made me laugh in grocery store parking lots, my mother's reaction wasn't joy. It was concern. "Are you sure?" she asked, standing in her kitchen folding towels like the question was casual. I mean, with his background. Marcus was black. I was white. And that's what she meant without saying it. When we got married at the courthouse 6 months later, only 3 people came. Marcus's parents and his sister. My family had a scheduling conflict. My mother said she had a church event. My father said the car was acting up. Michelle said she had to work. Aunt Barbara didn't even bother with an excuse. She just didn't show. When Carter was born 2 years later, my mother visited once. She held him for maybe 5 minutes, commented that he had Marcus's nose, and spent the rest of the visit talking about Michelle's kids. Pale, blonde, photogenic. The kind who fit. When Bree came along, the visits stopped altogether. But the requests for money? Those never stopped. Marcus noticed before I did. He'd watch me transfer payments, watch me check my phone anxiously during family dinners, watch me shrink whenever my mother called. "They're using you," he said one night, his voice gentle but firm. "They're struggling," I replied. "So are we." He wasn't wrong. We lived in a two-bedroom apartment in a complex off Route 33 where the parking lot flooded every spring. We drove cars with over 150,000 miles on them. We hadn't taken a real vacation in 4 years. But my family lived in the same house I grew up in, drove newer cars, and took weekend trips to Put in Bay every summer. I paid for all of it. And they never said thank you. They just kept asking. By the time Thanksgiving rolled around this year, I'd been the family ATM for 8 years. I'd co-signed loans, covered emergencies, and quietly absorbed every financial crisis they created. And in return, my children sat on the floor while Michelle's kids ate first. My photos stayed in drawers while theirs hung on walls. My sacrifices were invisible, while their needs were constant. Aunt Barbara didn't create the hierarchy. She just said out loud what everyone had been acting on for years. My kids didn't count. They never had. But standing in David Chen's office the next morning, the morning after Barbara's comment, I realized something that should have been obvious years ago. The system only worked if I kept feeding it. And I was about to stop. David Chen's office sat above a coffee shop on High Street, near the OSU campus. The waiting room smelled like espresso and old legal briefs. Through the window, I could see students walking to class, bundled in Buckeyes hoodies, their breath fogging in the cold November air. I'd brought everything. 3 accordion folders stuffed with bank statements, printed emails, text message screenshots, and a flash drive containing 8 years of digital records. The folders sat on my lap like evidence at a trial I hadn't realized I was building a case for. David walked out at 9:03 a.m., coffee in hand, reading glasses perched on his nose. He looked the same as he did at Ohio State, sharp, focused, the kind of guy who corrected your math homework and somehow made it feel helpful instead of condescending. "Vanessa," he said, extending his hand. "Come on back." His office was small but organized. Diplomas on the wall, family photos on the desk, a Buckeyes pennant from our graduation year. He gestured to the chair across from him and sat down, folding his hands. "So," he said, "tell me what's going on." I set the folders on his desk. "I need to know my options." "Options for what?" I opened the first folder and slid the spreadsheet across to him. "For stopping this." David picked up the document, his eyes scanning the columns. Dates. Amounts. Categories. His expression didn't change, but I saw his jaw tighten slightly. "This is all money you've given to family?" he asked. "Given. Loaned. Co-signed. Covered." I pulled out another stack. Mortgage payments for my parents. 17 months, $800 each. That's $13,600. I pointed to another section. Car loan for my cousin Michelle. Co-signed in 2019. I've made 42 payments. That's $14,700. Another page. Emergency medical bills for my aunt. Paid in full because she didn't have insurance. $8,200. David's pen hovered over a legal pad. "And they agreed to pay you back?" I pulled out my phone and scrolled through texts. I read them aloud one by one. "Just until we're caught up." "Mom, March 2018. Family helps family. We'll make it right." "Dad, August 2019. You're a lifesaver. I'll pay you back as soon as my tax return comes." "Michelle, November 2020. This is just temporary." "Barbara, June 2021. David set his pen down. "Did any of them pay you back?" "No." "Any of them?" Not a cent. He leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. "Vanessa, do you know how much total we're looking at here?" I nodded. $127,483. The number hung in the air between us like smoke. David stared at the spreadsheet, then at me. "And you documented all of it. Every transfer. Every Venmo. Every check. Every text where they asked and I said yes." He flipped through the pages, stopping on a bank statement from 2021. "This one here, $3,200 to your parents in November. What was that for?" "Thanksgiving dinner," I said quietly. "They were hosting 20 people. Said they couldn't afford the turkey, the sides, the decorations. So I covered it." "And this year?" I met his eyes. "This year, my aunt said my kids don't count." And my parents agreed. David closed the folder slowly. He removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. Vanessa, he said, I've been practicing family law for 12 years. I've seen financial exploitation, elder abuse, inheritance disputes. But this is systematic extraction. Can I stop it? Stop it. He almost laughed. You can dismantle it. He pulled out a fresh legal pad and started writing. Here's what we're going to do. First, I'm drafting cease and desist letters for any co-signed loans. You're removing yourself as a guarantor effective immediately. My chest tightened. Can I do that? With proper legal notice and documentation? Absolutely. Second, we're sending formal requests for repayment with a 60-day deadline. Third, if they don't respond, we file in small claims court for amounts under $6,000 and civil court for the rest. I stared at him. You're saying I can sue my own family? David looked at me with something like sympathy. Vanessa, they've been taking from you for 8 years. What you're doing now, that's not revenge. That's recovery. He slid the legal pad toward me. At the top he'd written, Reclaiming what's yours. Thanksgiving is in 2 days, he said. Do you want to wait? Or do you want to move now? I thought about Carter's face. About Bree asking what don't count meant. About 8 years of silence. Now, I said. I want to move now. David nodded. Then let's get to work. The money was one thing. The exclusions were another. David asked me to document everything. Not just the payments, but the pattern. The hierarchy. The way my family had quietly, methodically pushed my children to the margins while elevating Michelle's kids to the center of every gathering, every photo, every moment that mattered. So I did. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and went through years of family photos stored on my phone, on Facebook, on my mother's public albums. What I found wasn't subtle. It was surgical. Christmas 2019. My parents' living room in Columbus. The photo my mother posted showed Michelle's kids, Aiden and Harper, sitting front and center under the tree, surrounded by wrapped presents, their faces glowing with excitement. The caption, Our beautiful grandchildren making Christmas magical. Carter and Bree were in the background. Literally. You could see the edges of their bodies, cut off by the frame. Carter's elbow, Bree's shoulder, like they were extras in someone else's family movie. I scrolled further. Easter 2020. Another post. Aiden and Harper in matching pastel outfits, holding baskets overflowing with candy. Front row. Centered. Smiling. Carter and Bree? Standing behind them, partially blocked by Aunt Barbara's arm. Bree's face was blurry. Carter looked down at the ground. Thanksgiving 2021. The big family photo my father always insisted on taking. Everyone gathered around the dining room table in Grandview Heights. Michelle's kids sat at the table with the adults. Plates in front of them. Forks in their hands. My kids sat on the floor near the hallway. No plates. No forks. Just sitting there like they were waiting for permission to exist. I zoomed in on Carter's face. He was 7 then. He wasn't smiling. He was staring at his cousins with this look. Not anger, not jealousy. Just confusion. Like he was trying to solve a math problem that didn't add up. Marcus walked into the kitchen and saw me crying. He didn't say anything. He just sat down and looked at the screen. How long has this been happening? He asked quietly. Since they were born. He scrolled through the photos, his jaw tightening with each swipe. Vanessa, this isn't accidental. They're doing this on purpose. I wiped my eyes. I kept telling myself I was being oversensitive. That I was imagining it. You weren't imagining anything. He pointed at the screen. Look at this. Every single photo. Your kids are pushed to the back, cropped out, or not included at all. Michelle's kids are always centered. Always. I pulled up another album. My mother's 65th birthday party last spring at Schmidt's in German Village. She'd insisted on a big celebration. Rented out the whole back room, ordered platters of cream puffs and sausages, invited half of Columbus. The professional photos she paid for? Michelle's family in every single shot. Posed. Perfect. Framed. My family? We weren't in any of them. Not one. Marcus had noticed at the time. Did your mom forget to call us for photos? He'd asked. She probably just ran out of time, I'd said. But she didn't run out of time. She ran out of interest. I opened my text messages and found the thread with my mother from that day. Me, should we come over for pictures? Mom. Oh, we already finished. Maybe next time. Next time never came. I showed Marcus another message, this one from 2 months ago when my mother was planning her annual fall photo shoot at Inniswood Metro Gardens. Mom. Bringing the grandkids for pictures on Saturday. Can't wait to see how Aiden and Harper look in their new outfits. I'd responded. Want me to bring Carter and Bree? She'd left me on read. Marcus stared at the screen. She didn't even answer you. She never does. But it wasn't just photos. It was everything. At family dinners, Michelle's kids got first servings. Mine waited. At birthday parties, their names were announced loudly. Mine were mumbled as an afterthought. When relatives visited from out of state, they asked about Aiden and Harper by name. They called my kids Vanessa's little ones. Like their actual names didn't matter. Last 4th of July at Alum Creek, Michelle's kids got the good floaties, the shaded spot under the pavilion, the first pick of snacks. My kids shared one deflated raft and sat in the sun because no one saved them space. Bree had gotten sunburned that day. I'd asked my mother for sunscreen. She said, I only brought enough for Harper. Marcus closed the laptop gently. This isn't love, Vanessa. This is hierarchy. And you've been funding it. I looked at the pile of photos I'd printed out. Evidence. Documentation. Proof that my family hadn't just ignored my children. They'd erased them. Methodically. Consistently. For years. And every time I sent money, every time I said yes, I was paying for the system that told my kids they didn't count. David Chun had asked me to bring everything. The financial records were damning. But these photos? These were devastating. And they were coming with me to Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving morning arrived cold and gray. The kind of Ohio November day where the sky looks like wet concrete, and the wind cuts through your jacket no matter how many layers you wear. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror at 7 a.m., staring at my reflection. I'd barely slept. My eyes were puffy, my hands shaking slightly as I tried to apply mascara that kept smudging. Carter knocked on the door. Mom? Are we still going to Grandma's? I opened the door. He stood there in his nicest button-up shirt, the navy one I'd bought him for school pictures. Bree was behind him, wearing her favorite dress, the purple one with the sparkly collar. They looked so hopeful. So small. Yeah, buddy, I said, forcing a smile. We're going. Marcus stood in the hallway, arms crossed, watching me with that look he got when he was worried but trying not to show it. You sure about this? I nodded. I have to. We drove to my parents' house in Upper Arlington in silence. Carter stared out the window. Bree played with the zipper on her coat. Marcus kept his hand on my knee, squeezing gently every time we hit a red light, like he was reminding me I wasn't alone. When we pulled into the driveway, I saw Michelle's silver Rogue. The one I'd co-signed for, parked right in front. Aunt Barbara's Buick was there too, blocking half the driveway like she owned the place. My stomach twisted. Ready? Marcus asked. I wasn't. But I grabbed the casserole dish from the back seat anyway, the cranberry sauce nobody liked but everyone expected me to bring, and walked toward the front door. Inside, the house smelled like turkey and pie and something else I couldn't name. Nostalgia maybe. Or dread. My mother was in the kitchen wearing her holiday apron. The one that said blessed and grateful in looping cursive. She smiled when she saw me, the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. Oh good, you made it, she said, taking the dish from my hands without a thank you. Put your coats in the hallway. Dinner's almost ready. Michelle was already seated at the dining room table with Aiden and Harper, laughing about something on her phone. Aunt Barbara sat across from her, sipping wine from a glass that was too full for 11 a.m. My father nodded at me from his recliner. Vanessa. That was it. Just my name. Not Happy Thanksgiving. Not glad you're here. Just acknowledgement that I'd arrived. I looked around the room. The table was set for 10 people. Michelle's kids had place cards with their names written in my mother's careful handwriting. So did the adults. Carter and Bree didn't have place cards. Marcus saw it too. His jaw tightened. Mom, I said quietly, where are the kids sitting? My mother waved her hand vaguely toward the living room. Oh, we're tight on space this year. I set up a little table for them by the couch. They'll be more comfortable there anyway. Comfortable. That was the word she used. I walked into the living room. There was a folding card table pushed against the wall, the kind you buy at Target for $20. 2 plastic plates. 2 paper napkins. No name cards. No centerpiece. Just a table shoved in the corner like an afterthought. Bree looked up at me confused. Are we eating here? Before I could answer, Aunt Barbara's voice drifted from the dining room. I'm just saying, Thanksgiving is already tight this year. We can't seat everyone. So we prioritize the kids who actually, count. I froze. Carter froze. Time slowed down in that horrible way it does when you know something terrible is happening but you can't stop it. Michelle laughed. My mother didn't correct her. My father didn't look up from his phone. And then I heard it. The sound that broke me. A small shaky breath. Carter, trying not to cry. Bree tugged on my sleeve. Mommy, what does she mean we don't count? Her voice was so small. So innocent. Like she genuinely didn't understand why someone would say something so cruel. I kneeled down in front of my children, eye level, and saw it. The exact moment their world shifted. The moment they realized that the people who were supposed to love them unconditionally had conditions after all. Carter's lip trembled. Did we do something wrong? That question, did we do something wrong, shattered whatever part of me had been holding on. Marcus put his hand on my shoulder. Vanessa, he said softly. We don't have to stay. I looked at my kids. Then at the card table. Then at the dining room where Michelle's children sat in cushioned chairs with their names written in calligraphy. And something inside me didn't break. It sharpened. I stood up slowly, calmly, and took Bree's hand. Then Carter's. Get your coats, I said. My mother appeared in the doorway. What are you doing? I didn't answer her. I just walked past her, past Aunt Barbara, past Michelle's smug smile, and out the front door. Behind me, I heard my mother call out, Vanessa, don't be dramatic. But I wasn't being dramatic. I was being done. The calls started before we even made it home. My mother first. Then my father. Then Michelle. Then Aunt Barbara. By the time we pulled into our apartment complex off Route 33, my phone had buzzed 17 times. I didn't answer. Not yet. Marcus helped the kids inside while I sat in the car, staring at the missed call notifications lighting up my screen like fireworks. My hands were still shaking. My chest felt tight. But underneath the adrenaline, something else was rising, a cold, steady resolve. I waited until Carter and Bree were distracted with a movie before I finally listened to the voicemails. My mother's voice came first, sharp and defensive. Vanessa, I don't know what you think you heard, but you're completely overreacting. Barbara didn't mean anything by it. She was just being practical. You know we don't have enough room at the table for everyone. We were trying to make it work for all the kids. You're turning this into something it's not. Call me back so we can talk like adults. Practical. That word again. My father's message was shorter, gruffer. Your mother's upset. You embarrassed us in front of the whole family. We've always treated your kids fairly. If you can't handle a little constructive criticism about seating arrangements, that's your problem. Grow up and stop being so sensitive. Sensitive. The word they always used when I had the audacity to feel hurt. Michelle's voicemail was the worst. Her voice dripped with false concern. The kind that sounds sweet but tastes like poison. Vanessa, hey, it's me. Listen, I think there's been a huge misunderstanding. Aunt Barbara was just trying to help Mom organize things. You know how chaotic holidays get. No one was trying to exclude Carter and Bree. We love them. But you have to admit, it's easier when the kids who are used to family dinners sit at the main table. It's not personal. It's just realistic. You know how kids are, some just fit better into these kinds of settings. Please don't make this a bigger deal than it is. Let's just move past it, okay? Some just fit better. I played that line 3 times, letting the words settle like sediment at the bottom of a glass. Then Aunt Barbara's message played. No apology. No concern. Just irritation. Vanessa, this is ridiculous. I've been coming to Thanksgiving at this house for 30 years, and we've never had a problem until you decided to make one. Your mother and father work hard to host everyone, and you stormed out like a child throwing a tantrum. If you can't appreciate what they do for you, maybe you shouldn't come at all. And frankly, your kids need to learn that not everything revolves around them. That's just how the world works. The sooner they understand that, the better. I set the phone down. Marcus sat beside me on the couch, his jaw tight. They actually said that. Every word. They're gaslighting you. I nodded slowly. They're rewriting it. Making it sound like I'm the problem. Like I'm the one being unreasonable. Because you stopped playing along. He was right. For 8 years, I'd absorbed their cruelty, their dismissals, their hierarchy. I'd smiled through the exclusions, funded their lives, and convinced myself that keeping the peace was worth the cost. But the second I stopped absorbing it, the second I stood up and walked out, I became the villain in their story. My phone buzzed again. A group text from my mother, sent to the entire family. I'm heartbroken that Vanessa chose to leave Thanksgiving over a simple misunderstanding. We've always welcomed her family with open arms, but she continues to create drama where there is none. I hope she finds peace and stops punishing us for trying to keep this family together. Within minutes, the responses poured in. So sad. Praying for her. Aunt Linda. Family is everything. Hope she realizes what she's losing. Cousin Jeff. Some people just can't handle the holidays. Michelle. Marcus read over my shoulder, his hand tightening into a fist. They're turning the whole family against you. I stared at the screen, watching the messages multiply. Sympathy for my mother. Concern for my father. Judgments about my sensitivity and my dramatics. Not a single person asked what actually happened. Not one person questioned why I left. Not one person wondered if maybe, just maybe, my children had been hurt. They didn't care about the truth. They cared about the narrative. And the narrative was easier if I was the problem. I looked at Marcus, my voice steady. They think this is over. They think if they gaslight me hard enough, I'll apologize and come crawling back like I always do. Are you? I thought about Carter's trembling lip. About Bree's small voice asking what don't count meant. About 8 years of funding a family that saw my children as less than. No, I said quietly. I'm not. Marcus nodded. Good. So what's next? I opened my text thread with David Chun and typed. They're doubling down. Let's move forward with everything. His response came seconds later. On it. See you Monday. I set the phone down and looked at Marcus. Monday we dismantle it. Monday morning. I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. Not peace. Peace would come later. This was something sharper. Focused. The kind of calm that comes right before you change everything. David Chun had worked through the weekend. By 9 a.m. he had 3 manila envelopes sitting on his desk, each one labeled with a name: Ellen Carter, Harold Carter, Michelle Porter. These are formal demand letters, he explained, sliding them across to me. Each one details the exact amount owed, includes copies of transaction records, and gives them 60 days to respond with a repayment plan. If they don't respond or refuse, we file in civil court. I stared at the envelopes. My parents' names typed in clean official font. My cousin's name underneath. It felt surreal, like I was looking at evidence in someone else's life. What happens when they get these? I asked. David leaned back in his chair. Reality hits. Hard. Most people don't realize financial arrangements between family members are legally enforceable until a lawyer tells them they are. They're going to lose it. They're going to panic, he corrected. And that's when people either pay up or dig in deeper. Either way, you'll know where you stand. He slid another document toward me. This one's different. It's a cease and desist for the co-signed auto loan. I've already contacted the lender. As of this morning, you're no longer financially responsible for Michelle's car payments. If she defaults, it's on her credit, not yours. I felt something loosen in my chest. Just like that. Just like that. He pulled out one more page. And this is a letter to your parents notifying them that all future financial assistance has been terminated. No more mortgage help. No more emergency payments. Nothing. I picked up the letter and read the opening line. This correspondence serves as formal notice that Vanessa Carter Hayes will no longer provide financial support of any kind, effective immediately. It was so cold, so final, so necessary. When do they get these? I asked. David smiled slightly. They already did. Certified mail. Delivered this morning at 8:47 a.m. My stomach flipped. They have them now. Right now. Probably reading them as we speak. I looked at the clock on his wall. 9:14 a.m. My phone sat face down on his desk, silent for the moment. But I knew that was about to change. Vanessa, David said, his tone shifting. The next few days are going to be rough. They're going to call. They're going to show up. They're going to try every manipulation tactic they know. Guilt. Anger. Threats. Maybe even tears. I know. Do you? He leaned forward. Because the hardest part isn't sending the letters. It's what comes after. When they tell you you're destroying the family. When they call you selfish. When they try to convince you that enforcing boundaries makes you the villain. I met his eyes. I've been the villain since I walked out on Thanksgiving. At least now I'm the villain with a lawyer. He nodded slowly. Good. Then you're ready. We left his office at 9:30 a.m. I sat in my car in the parking lot on High Street, watching students walk by with their backpacks and coffee cups, living lives that didn't include legal demand letters to their own parents. My phone buzzed. Then again. Then again. I turned it over. 12 missed calls. My mother. My father. Michelle. Aunt Barbara. My mother again. Michelle again. Then the texts started flooding in. Mom, call me right now. Dad, what the hell is this letter? You're suing us? Michelle. Vanessa, are you insane? Mom. How could you do this to your own family? Aunt Barbara. You've lost your mind. I didn't respond. Not yet. Instead, I drove to Starbucks near Polaris, ordered a grande latte, and sat by the window. I opened my laptop and logged into the family photo album I'd created over the weekend. The one documenting every exclusion, every cropped photo, every moment my children were pushed to the margins. I titled it simply, Evidence. Then I uploaded it to a private cloud folder and sent the link to David with a note. In case we need it. My phone rang again. My mother. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice came through frantic, breaking. Vanessa, please. Please call me back. I don't understand what's happening. A lawyer? You sent us a letter from a lawyer? After everything we've done for you? After we raised you, loved you, supported you? This is how you repay us? By threatening to sue your own parents? What will people think? What will the family say? You're tearing us apart over money? Please, sweetheart, let's talk about this like a family. We can fix this. Just call me back. I saved the voicemail. Then my father called. His message was different. No tears, just anger. You want to play lawyer games? Fine. But don't come crying to us when you need help. Don't expect us to be there for your kids when you've made it clear we don't matter. You've made your choice, Vanessa. Now live with it. I saved that one too. Michelle's text was the most desperate. Vanessa, please. I can't afford a lawyer. I can't afford to lose my car. I have kids. You know I'm struggling. How can you do this to me? We're family. Please just drop this. I'm begging you. I stared at her message for a long time. The same Michelle who laughed when Aunt Barbara said my kids didn't count. The same Michelle whose children sat at the main table while mine sat on the floor. I typed back one line. You should have thought about that before you co-signed your cruelty with your silence. Then I blocked her number. By noon, the panic had spread. My phone showed 17 more missed calls from relatives I hadn't heard from in years. Cousins, aunts, family friends. All of them saying the same thing. How could you? What's wrong with you? Family doesn't do this. But none of them asked what my family had done to me. None of them asked why I left Thanksgiving. None of them asked why my children sat alone. That evening, Marcus came home and found me sitting at the kitchen table, calm, centered. "How do you feel?" he asked. I thought about it. Really thought about it. "Free," I said. And for the first time in 8 years, I meant it. 3 weeks passed. 3 weeks of silence broken only by certified mail, legal notifications, and the occasional frantic voicemail I didn't return. David Chin called me on a Tuesday afternoon in mid-December. His voice was measured, professional, but I could hear the satisfaction underneath. "Vanessa, we got responses. All 3 of them." I was sitting in my living room, watching Carter and Bree build a gingerbread house on the coffee table. They were laughing, arguing about where the gumdrops should go, completely unbothered by the fact that we weren't going to my parents' house for Christmas this year. "What did they say?" I asked. "Your parents want to negotiate a payment plan. They're offering $500 a month until the debt is cleared. It'll take them years, but they're acknowledging the amount owed." I did the math in my head. At $500 a month, it would take them over 20 years to pay back $127,000. They'd be in their 80s. "And Michelle?" David sighed. "She's claiming financial hardship. Says she can't afford to pay anything right now. Her lawyer sent a counteroffer, $50 a month for the co-signed loan." $50. $50. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so perfectly predictable. "What about Aunt Barbara?" No response. "Technically, she doesn't owe you money directly, so there's no legal action we can take against her. But word travels fast in families like yours. I'd bet she's feeling the pressure." He was right. I'd heard through a cousin who still texted me occasionally that Barbara had been uninvited from Christmas at my parents' house. Apparently, my mother blamed her for starting all this, with her comment about my kids not counting. The system was eating itself. "So what do you want to do?" David asked. I watched Bree carefully place a peppermint on the gingerbread roof, her tongue sticking out in concentration. Carter handed her another one, patient, encouraging. "Accept my parents' payment plan," I said. "Reject Michelle's counteroffer and proceed with court filing. And send a final letter to Barbara stating that while no financial restitution is owed, her presence at any future family gathering I attend is unacceptable." "You're still leaving the door open for your parents?" I thought about that. They're trying. It's not enough, but it's something. Michelle isn't even pretending to take responsibility. And Barbara? She's never going to apologize. I just want her to know she doesn't get to be around my children anymore. Understood. I'll draft everything today. After we hung up, Marcus sat down beside me on the couch. "How do you feel?" "Tired," I admitted, "but lighter." That Saturday we hosted our own Christmas dinner. Just us. Me, Marcus, Carter, Bree, and Marcus's parents who drove up from Cincinnati. His mom brought her famous mac and cheese. His dad told terrible jokes that made the kids howl with laughter. We set the table together. Carter and Bree got the best seats, right in the middle, where they could reach everything, where their voices carried, where they belonged. No card table in the corner. No waiting for scraps. No wondering if they counted. During dinner, Bree looked up at me with a forkful of mashed potatoes. "Mom, can we do Christmas like this every year?" "Yeah," I said, my throat tightening. "We can." Carter nodded, quieter, but I saw the relief in his eyes. The kind of relief that comes when you finally stop waiting for permission to feel safe. After dinner, while Marcus's parents played a board game with the kids, I stepped outside onto our apartment balcony. The December air was cold and sharp, but the sky was clear, stars scattered like salt across black fabric. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "We got the payment plan. We'll start in January. I'm sorry, Vanessa. For all of it." I stared at the message for a long time. It wasn't enough. Maybe it would never be enough. But it was the first time she'd apologized without a justification attached to it. I didn't respond. Not yet. Instead, I thought about Thanksgiving. About the moment Aunt Barbara's words cut through the room. About Carter's trembling lip and Bree's small, confused voice asking what "don't count" meant. That was the moment everything broke. But standing here now, 3 weeks later, with my children laughing inside a warm apartment where they were centered, celebrated, and seen. I realized something. Breaking wasn't the end. It was the beginning. My parents had lost their financial safety net. Michelle was facing court dates and repossession notices. Aunt Barbara had been exiled from the family gatherings she once controlled. And me? I got my kids back. Not physically, they'd always been with me. But I got them back emotionally, got back the part of them that had started to believe maybe they didn't count. Maybe they didn't belong. Maybe they were less than. Now they knew the truth. They counted. They always had. I just had to stop funding the people who pretended they didn't. Inside, I heard Bree shriek with laughter as Carter won whatever game they were playing. Marcus called out, "Rematch! Rematch!" I smiled and went back inside, closing the door on the cold and everything it represented. The card table was gone. The hierarchy was dismantled. The silence that had protected them for so long had finally been broken. And my children? They were sitting exactly where they belonged. At the center of everything. I used to think that being strong meant carrying weight without complaining. That being a good daughter, a good cousin, a good family member meant saying yes even when everything inside me screamed no. I thought love was supposed to be quiet, uncomplicated, self-sacrificing. But standing in my apartment on Christmas Eve, watching my children decorate cookies with Marcus's parents, their faces bright, their laughter unfiltered, I realized something I should have understood years ago. Love isn't supposed to hurt like that. Real love doesn't rank children. It doesn't create hierarchies. It doesn't whisper cruel things and expect you to absorb them in silence. Real love doesn't ask you to fund your own erasure. And the people who told me I was being dramatic? The ones who said I was too sensitive, too emotional, too unwilling to understand how things work. They were just protecting a system that benefited them. Because here's what I learned. The moment you stop playing along, the moment you stop absorbing the cruelty and funding the comfort of people who see you as a resource instead of a person, that's when they panic. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're doing something they never thought you'd do. You're choosing yourself. My parents are paying me back now. Slowly. $500 a month, every month like clockwork. It's not about the money anymore. It's about acknowledgement. It's about them finally admitting, in writing with legal witnesses, that what they did wasn't okay. Michelle is facing the consequences of loans she never intended to repay. Her car is one missed payment away from repossession. Her credit score is tanking. And every time she tries to call me, every time she sends a text begging me to just drop this, I remember her laugh. I remember the way she sat at that table while my children sat on the floor. Aunt Barbara? She's been uninvited from every major family gathering since Thanksgiving. My mother won't talk to her. My father screens her calls. The same woman who once controlled every holiday, every seating chart, every moment of family life. She's on the outside now. And me? I'm not on the outside anymore. I'm just somewhere else. Somewhere better. Carter started 3rd grade in January. His teacher called me last week to say he's been raising his hand more, participating more, smiling more. I don't know what changed, she said, but he seems lighter. I knew what changed. He stopped carrying the weight of adults who made him feel small. Bree asked me the other day if we were going to Grandma's for Easter. I told her maybe someday. But not until they understood that she and Carter weren't optional. They weren't extras. They weren't the kids who didn't count. She nodded, thought about it for a second, then said, "That's okay, Mom. I like our house better anyway." And just like that, I knew we were going to be fine. Because here's the truth that no one tells you when you're stuck in a family that sees you as a utility instead of a person. You are allowed to stop. You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to protect your children from people who don't see their value. Even if those people are your own blood. You are allowed to set boundaries that feel mean to people who have never respected a single one. And you are allowed to build a life where the people at your table actually want you there. Not for what you can give them. Not for what you can fix. But because you matter. I didn't destroy my family. I just stopped pretending the foundation wasn't already cracked. What they lost was convenience. What I gained was peace. And if you're sitting here, reading this or listening to this, feeling that tight knot in your chest because you recognize this story, because you've been the one funding the hierarchy, absorbing the cruelty, sitting your kids at the card table while someone else's kids get the good seats, I want you to hear this. You are not being dramatic. You are not being too sensitive. You are not imagining it. And you are not alone. The people who benefit from your silence will always tell you that speaking up makes you the villain. Let them. Because on the other side of that accusation is something they can never take from you: freedom. So if this story of justice against the abuse of power resonated with you, hit like and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Tell me your story. Tell me the moment you realized you were done. Tell me what happened when you finally chose yourself. And if you're new here, subscribe now. You absolutely don't want to miss tomorrow's deep dive into families who picked the wrong person to overlook, and the moment the truth finally came out. Because your voice matters. Your story matters. And the people who tried to make you invisible? They're about to learn what happens when you finally step into the light. My kids don't sit in corners anymore. And I will never apologize for that.